Private prisons have been around for decades. They promote themselves as cost-effective community partners, primed to save taxpayer dollars. But critics say that's because they cut corners, creating unsafe conditions. It's big business. Major private prison companies are even publicly traded, and last year raked in billions of profits. According to the Sentencing Project, they operate in 29 states, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons relies on them too. John Pfaff, professor at Fordham Law School and author of Locked In, The True Causes of Mass Incarceration and How to Achieve Real Reform, says even though private prisons only house about 9% of the total prison population, they grab the most attention.
I think people feel like there's something distinctly morally repugnant about paying cash to put people in cages.
They get paid for each inmate locked up in their facilities. In 2012, Corrections Corporation of America, now known as CoreCivic, offered a shocking deal. The company would purchase prisons in 48 states if the states would guarantee a 90% occupancy rate.
I'm not saying corporations are evil, but corporations exist for one thing: to make money, maximum profit. That's okay if you're making widgets or toothpaste, but when you're dealing with people and you're making money off of prison, you're starting to treat people like they're toothpaste.
Jesus Cardenas was locked up for check fraud. He served part of his time in a state prison before being transferred to a private one, and says he immediately noticed a difference in the level of security.
They were just going through the motions. These officers that were there were just drawing a paycheck.
He says fights like this one at a private correction center in Idaho were a daily occurrence. And unless someone was severely hurt, he says they went unnoticed. ICE also contracts with private facilities. In a federal lawsuit filed last month, a Mexican woman says within hours of being deported, she and 2 other women were taken from their dorms and raped by officials at a facility run by CoreCivic in Houston. Criminologist Fran Buntman says when a government detains or sentences someone, it has an obligation to see it through.
We've taken away their liberty rights to control their own lives. We as a society and the government as the institution looking after them actually have a responsibility to their welfare. We as a society cannot subcontract out that responsibility to a private agency.
Incarceration is a big ticket item. States spend $50 billion a year. And all said, when you factor in police and prosecutors, it costs a total of $200 billion tax dollars to round up, prosecute, and keep inmates behind bars. Over the last year, activists successfully waged campaigns to squeeze private prisons financially, pressuring half a dozen major banks to cut off their financing. Investors pulled back too, and that could keep the companies from growing. Professor Pfaff says some private prisons do operate better than others, just like those in the public system, and points out state-owned prisons also have incentives to keep their doors open. It's just less transparent. No matter where inmates serve time, he encourages Americans to focus on the power of redemption.
Jesus never wrote anybody off, right? You know, that very last moment, he didn't care what the person next to him on the cross was up there for. And I think that there's a very important lesson in what he didn't say and what he didn't ask about how we should view, even those who have done amongst the worst things possible, that we should never just throw them away.
During the last decade, the overall prison rate has fallen by 15%, but America still locks up more people than any other country, and private prisons appear here to stay, at least for now. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.